My parental units, some of them would invite me on cruise ship vacations with them, and it would be years after they could have helped me, and didn't. My whole family, they were kind of a little bit better off, and I kind of had kids in a very isolated area out in West Virginia, while the rest of my family was in Texas. It was just kind of odd. But at one point, after they themselves took lots of cruise vacations and posted those pictures online and ran around back and forth with each other and, showed off all the money that they had to spend, while my kids and I were kind of just sitting there. It was really difficult for me to advance in any way in the situation that I was in just naturally. It would have been difficult, and it is difficult for people just naturally to advance from situations like that on their own. But when you have an entire community and all of the businesses and white collar people in that community all working together to make sure that you don't advance, it can become it basically becomes slavery. You become a slave. And I'd lived this slavery existence the entire time, and I lived with very little. And I didn't have the best access to resources or good people, or I was living in like Section 8 housing and things like that. It wasn't really the best environments, I don't suppose. And even if I was 1,500 miles away from my family, they would still pay the people around me, or the people around me were still getting paid or connected to this trafficking group, which would be first explained to me from the time I was a toddler, basically, and then again later on in my pre-teen days. I hate using that phrase. My parents would invite me in person to take a ride. All of us, my children and I, go with them on a cruise voyage. I had a flash in my mind. I envisioned, that my children and I would be trapped on this ship out on the ocean, and that it would be easy for us to be abducted or to be hurt, or for private things to happen to us while we were unaware, because my parents and my family, which I had not really told anybody up until that point, but everybody was kind of a part of this weird like sleep trafficking ring thing. I mean, I'm sure they were doing it while people were not asleep too, but what they were mostly trying to do was, while people were asleep. I had a flash in my mind, and I envisioned my children and I being trapped on a ship out in the ocean, or being abducted, kidnapped, having one of the children go missing. Sorry for repeating myself there. I could only imagine the terrible plans my parents had for my children and I after isolating us in extreme poverty up until that point, for the duration of my kids' entire lives even. I realized that it might be hard to imagine that someone would just sit in place, or like be placed in one place and just deal with it or whatever, but I didn't know really what to do or how to get help, and I actually thought that it just wasn't the time frame to try to get help. Like, I knew that I was gonna have to outweight some things that I was gonna have to play the waiting game. I didn't realize how long I was gonna have to play the waiting game, and that nearly everybody was a bad guy, and that there was basically no good guys at all, and that I would only just barely survive it all just because, by the grace of God. By the grace of God alone, that's the only reason why I'm standing here today. Like, I owe it all to Jesus, to Yah, to the Holy Spirit. I owe it all to God for my life today. I'm not sure how many times resurrected life. And they seem to have cut me out of some kind of inheritance, which I wasn't concerned with at the time. I was just concerned that it seemed like they had 86'd my grandfather, which I made another video about. They then used that money, it seemed, to continue to fund a trafficking ring, to which they are so tightly connected. Alright, so, and that inheritance would have been left behind by my grandfather, and then if there were other inheritances, I have not been made aware fully of them either. There might be something to do with a life insurance policy money or whatever. Something that is equally, something that's more disturbing than all that, though, is not knowing what happened to my grandpa's body. Sorry to take you for a loop-de-loo there, but I don't know what happened to my grandpa's body. And, I don't know if he became ashes in some form. I mean, he asked for his ashes to be spread somewhere, but I'm not sure that is what I would want done if I found out that his body was still available. And then other times he told me that he donated his body to science, which nowadays, now looking back on everything, sounds like it would have been a really bad idea. At one point they came to visit me in West Virginia for the first time, and it was while I lived in Beverly, and I need a haircut really bad. Which one of you wants to cut my hair? You'll be able to see my Neuralink scar back there. It's really bothersome. So anyways, they said that they had to buy a dog or go look at a dog or something like that. So they drove from Texas to the East Coast, the upper East Coast or whatever. And that's when they came to visit my kids and I in West Virginia for their very first time. Over a really important dog. And they, of course, had to make it a point to let me know that it was just about the dog, that we were just kind of like a side stop or whatever that wasn't that important, because they had this thing where they had to kind of treat us like we weren't really that important. At one point, I offered to guide them on a ride through the woods, and it was a path that I had driven before, but it's almost like you almost lose track of how long it takes you to get through there, or whenever it's you driving yourself, you can drive whatever speed that you need to get through back roads or whatever, and you can actually get pretty good at it to where it doesn't really take you that long. But if some, city slicker comes in a rental car and they're wanting to take a little ride through the woods, I guess it's a really bad idea to take them on the back road from Elkins, West Virginia, out towards Currens. And we didn't even make it all the way to Currens because that would have been a greater distance away. But there's this back road from Elkins that leads you back around to, just another main road basically that leads you back out to Elkins, or you can go the other direction and make it to Currens. It's a beautiful ride, but it's a really long one. And it became awkward between us all in the car, for a moment, my parents started to get really silent, and there started to be like this weird awkwardness, and they started to like act really weird and stuff. And that's whenever I realized that my parents thought that I was taking them really far into the woods rather than just another road to another road. They thought I was like taking them into the woods to like, you know what I mean? And I tried to explain that the main road was up ahead leading back to civilization, and that we weren't actually leading further away, but my parents seemed terrified, and it was a huge sign to me of their guilt, that they felt so tremendously guilty for everything that they'd actually done to my kids and I for like the entire time, that they really thought that I was taking them out into the woods to like, I guess, get rid of them and rob them and take the car or whatever. And like, I absolutely 100% believe that my parents thought that I was going to do that to them, and not only did they think that, but they felt that I would have been justified by doing so. In doing so, they felt like I would have been right by doing something like that, which was also shocking. It's a little bit hard for me to, you know what I'm saying? I'm actually, I've been actually really sensitive about all of this for a really long time. And I've basically just like had people running me into the ground and stuff the whole time, while they talk a lot of shit and do all kinds of dumbass fucking setups and do what they can to have me trafficked. And I was like trafficked at least 3 out of the 4 years of the Biden administration. I think I was trafficked during the whole Biden administration, as far as having been pushed out onto the streets and like run around all God's creation and stuff. Because I guess in order for me to be a proper applicant in a certain type of experimental list, they needed for me to be homeless. So they made me lose my job, my 3-bedroom apartment, a lot. Like it was insane. And that's not the only time that they did that. That was just one of the times that they did that. So yeah, it's been a really rough ride for a really long time. And the next video that I have to make has to be about me kind of introducing myself more and letting you guys know where I'm from and a little bit more about my life or whatever. But it's not really going to be that exciting, you know? Like, I'm really not trying to put on a show here. I don't believe in me personally being entertainment for anybody. It's difficult for me to even, like, humor, laugh with someone in a car when I'm riding around with them or during any other circumstance or situation. Like, it's a little bit difficult for me to be anything other than 100% genuine. Like once in a while, like, you know, of course, hold back like anybody else would, from like maybe saying things that might, you know, hurt people's feelings a little bit or whatever. I try to be a little bit courteous, you know what I mean? I try to be a little bit more on the polite side about things. By not always sharing my opinions. So here they had been inviting me to take my children with them on a cruise ship trap out on the ocean, but they couldn't even trust me enough to guide them through the woods in their rental car. And that was what really sealed the deal to me about them being like, not just weird, but like intentionally and deliberately weird, and that it wasn't just like them being caught up in some stuff that they didn't mean to get caught up in or whatever, that they really were very intentional with their crimes, very cruel and methodical. It was all very well thought out, just as I had put together beforehand, or something that I took into consideration or felt like I noticed, but that I wasn't really fully acceptant of yet until now. And they'd held me in like complete poverty. I was someone who wasn't able to like go out to eat or just go pick something out that I liked. Like, I'm not sure that people actually understand what I'm talking about. It wasn't the same kind of poverty that you guys are experiencing, just like because you're not getting paid as much as you would like to be. No. It was a little bit more severe than that, and it was very deliberate. And anytime that I would advance in any way, something would happen to take away from however I had advanced. So let's say that all of a sudden my place was all decked out in like nice things or whatever. Then all of a sudden, while the kids and I are asleep or not at home, or whatever, all of a sudden we come home or we wake up and the rug is completely covered in all these different colored paints. And so now here's all this nice stuff in this room that was bought by, whoever, and now, because I couldn't really afford to buy hardly anything, nearly everything that we had was just stuff that was given to us. Like, they made sure that I didn't have money for anything. So now here's this rug, and the rug is destroyed. So here we'd advanced, and now they do something to take part of that away. And so we can't just have something nice, you know what I mean? There's never any, like, anytime that anybody would do anything nice, they would then do something shitty on top of that, which I have also heard this same behavior described in a book called A Child Called It. And I believe that the author of that book is a man named Dave Pelzer. And I think that I've also heard this same behavior described from other abuse survivors, as they describe how their abuser would give them a gift or help them advance somehow, but that they would then do something nasty on top of it to try to make it to try to take it from being a high frequency situation, a high vibrational situation of growth, to a situation of trauma or stuntedness, or loss or lack or upset, to turn a positive situation into a negative situation. And it then makes the fact that your abuser came off of anything for you, it then makes it so that whatever they came off of, so to speak, that it was worth it to them in the long run. So they didn't pay for you to have, whatever nice thing that was. What they paid for was for you to be upset over whatever happens to the nice thing or with the advancement. And they would deliberately make sure that we were unprotected and kept in unprotectable places like Section 8 housing and things like that, where, like, at one point I had a collection of makeup and jewelry because I used to wear makeup and jewelry. You see me wearing this right now. It's That's what I got right now. I mean, like, I have like a couple little crappy rings or whatever, but nothing serious. I don't really. I only wear those kinds of things once in a while or whatever. But I remember in my one of my apartments in Beverly that I had a bag of makeup and jewelry, and I'd actually gotten into the habit of wearing it, and had started to collect some more, like, cooler stuff, and just all of a sudden I went home one day and it was gone, and I felt like that it wasn't just someone who wanted makeup and jewelry. I felt like official people came into my apartment and took those things out of my apartment so that I couldn't, so that I wouldn't look better or something like that, so that I couldn't improve my appearance. And this was something that happened like constantly. Anytime that I had any makeup and jewelry, it would then just disappear. And that was like one of the things that they would use, as I was saying, to like, oh, I'm going to give you something and then I'm going to take it away. And what really became, and they did this to me a million billion times, to where I just, what I mean, kind of couldn't really say anything about it and would just have to accept what was going on. They would even like take my stuff right in front of me, like whole ass computers and everything, and there was nothing I could do about it. What was I gonna do about it? I mean, I've even watched these guys reach into my trash and pull my used lady products out of the trash and put them into a separate bag and leave with them, and not be able to do anything about it. And I feel like that is how everybody wants me. They want me all to be what they think is completely unprotected. And unfortunately for them, I serve a God who's protected me the entire time. They asked someone who had nothing and who was forced to live in lack and poverty if she wanted to go on a cruise ship for the first time, to go see the beautiful ocean, a place that she'd never seen, to go see wonderful animals and incredible things that I've never seen before, to go eat amazing food, to be around people who served me rather than expecting me to serve them. They asked me, the most, pious peasant of them all at the time, and I told them no. I didn't want to go on their cruise vacation with them like everybody else wanted to, even after seeing all of them have a really good time taking all those pictures. They'd left my children and I out of every aspect of their lives and had been estranged from us for years, again, after us all departing upon really strange circumstances that have to do with the death of Natalie Dumas Young and my grandfather, people who I've talked about in videos months ago. I believe back in September, when you guys let my kid go with serial killers. And they had just kind of left me, like, just not really helped me very much with anything. They weren't, anytime that I asked them for anything, any help, it was like pulling teeth. They sent me some cell phones for us to use, and they made sure to leave their nasty text messages about me on the cell phones for me to just be humiliated by or whatever. And I had no reason to trust them, and they were odd, and they were even at one point passing each other what I thought could only be drugs, because why were they secretly passing each other something, you know what I mean, and then going in the bathroom with it. That was like, I was like, are they doing Are they doing the coca? Like, what's going on here? My parents and I are from Texas. They sent me to West Virginia, where they paid communities around me to hold me as an unspoken prisoner or hostage, so to speak. They'd been asking me through Messenger or phone or whatever if I wanted to take the kids or with them on the cruise ship. And my parents, all right, sorry, hang on, let me find out where I am on here. I knew that my parents had been trafficking me my entire life, and that they basically sent everyone around me to talk to me, and that they were the ones, they and others basically chose behind my back who was going to interact with me in my life, what things they were allowed to talk about, who my boyfriends were going to be, and how they were allowed to treat me, and what they were supposed to do. And just different weird stuff, like my parents and my family and others all like practically sat at a round table and made all those decisions about me without me. I mean, they decided who I had kids with, everything. I mean, it was an absolutely terrible life, just sitting there being a little puppet slave. I began to worry that my parents were basically just trying to, like, I knew that they'd been trying to get rid of me since they'd 86'd my grandpa and these other people. And I was worried that part of the reason why they were trying to get rid of me was because maybe they wanted to traffic my kids, or maybe they wanted to do the same thing to all three of my kids, which would mean that that all of my kids would be put in their own separate places, and they would be kind of like brainwashed just a little bit, or like kind of held in place and kind of controlled and watched. You know what I mean? Like the Truman Show would start all over in their lives. And then I was worried also that we had already been exploited, and there were already situations that I'd already made reports about, and issues that I'd tried to bring up to CPS, to law enforcement, to federal agents, to marshals, to state troopers, to everyone who I could. And I was not getting the attention that the situation truly deserved. So I've never been able to get help for any of this. Not my whole life. It's been absolutely tragic, to be honest. I had also been really worried that my kids were being secretly abused behind my back. I was worried that there was like a child ring of abuse going on, where all of the kids in all of the households were being abused like this, and that all of their parents had kind of been pulled into this like drug and chomo kind of death ring cult thing, or whatever was going on there. And because people knew that I really cared about my kids, and that I was absolutely mortified about like pedophilia and child molestation and exploitation and stuff like that, I mean, they knew that I was terrified of it. So one of the ways that they would incorporate that into their personalized abuse methods against me was to constantly kind of subtly set up situations to make it to where I would be like worried about what was going on, or worried that worried about my kids or whatever. It was a really messed up thing that they would manage to incorporate into situations that you would even least expect it. The timing was just insane. It was so horrible. And it would be really difficult for me to determine whether or not people were just like messing with me, whether or not it was something that was actually happening, whether or not like what is going on here. And yeah, it's been absolute torture. That became one of the ways people used people would be incentivized to abuse me. That's one of their torture tactics that they used against me all along. And I mean, that's not all of it. I mean, there's so much to it. At the time all of this is going on, I have a pretty good idea that they've been putting hidden cameras up throughout my apartments, you know, and I've made videos and mentioned before, but you know, that I knew that I was probably being exploited online somehow, that my parents and my family were, and potentially their friends, were catfishing me online. It seemed to me that people were desperate to get images, photographs, and videos of me potentially, and so I knew that if there was this desperate attempt to collect all of this, that people were probably monetizing, you know, people were probably making money off of me and off of this situation, especially if they knew that the person was unaware, and especially if people were able to lie about that particular person or embellish or create stories about them or just whatever. It's just a really weird situation, because all that I knew that I was just a single mom in the ghetto who was being like just kind of like held there and wasn't really allowed to like work or do very much. I was in a place where seasonally I would have been stuck indoors a lot. I would have been sitting around with my food stamps, but no way to really get around. It was just a long stretch of of my life that I could have really been doing something better than that, but people made sure that I didn't you know, advance my education or in any way at all. Basically, just only in sheer survival against douchebags. Before my dad and my evil stepmother left, after visiting for a few days, my dad came up to me, and my stepmother was standing behind him, and he came up to me and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Goodbye, LaDonna, my firstborn." And he said it like that was the last time that we were, you know what I mean, that he was ever gonna see me, that he planned on never seeing me again, you know what I'm saying, like goodbye, like that was what he intended to be his final farewell. And I was like, ooh, that's not a very good sign. And that whole firstborn thing kind of lined up with the Luciferian sacrifices of the firstborn tribute to Stan. Now, honestly, that made it really obvious. I mean, that hit me like a ton of bricks. And looking back, like, it's kind of a sick thing to do to someone, what he did, and a lot of the things that they did were really sick. But yeah. And I mean, like, I loved my parental units and my family. Like, I loved all my family. I loved even my enemies. I've always been like this really loving, humble, compassionate, quiet, soft-spoken, silent person who's always kept mine and everyone's secrets under wraps and would not have breathed a word about anybody's business. You know what I mean? I was really good at being someone who everyone could trust to stay quiet forever. And then they decided to do a lot of really, really bad things to other people and to me. And here we are. And after they left, I went into this really, I started to like cry really bad. And I went into this like really bizarre, almost style depression, and I did not know what was happening, and I could not stop crying. And like, I would go to sleep at night and I would dream that these demons were attacking me all night long, and I would just be fighting these demons in my dreams, and I would think that I was gonna die in my dreams, and that if these demons killed me in my dreams, that I would die in real life. And I mean, like, it was really, really messing with me, and I didn't understand what was going on. And I looked out the window and was like just staring out the window, and I saw that there were cars in the parking lot of the church in front of me, and I felt God tell me to go straight to that church right then. And I was like, but God, I'm wearing these little red shorts and I'm not dressed for church. And he was like, I don't care. He was like, take your little red shorts and go over to that little Baptist church. I was like, okay. And I did. I went over to the Baptist church. I was like wearing shorts and all this stuff. And while I was there, like, I caught everybody off guard, and this old preacher guy, which I don't really believe in the Baptist church settings, you know what I mean? Like, I don't believe in the Baptist idea that salvation is the only gift, and that none of the other gifts matter, and that we shouldn't teach on the gifts. That's a very Roman Catholic approach to things that I absolutely don't agree with. We don't just pick and choose which parts of the Bible that we're going to choose to observe or respect or honor. It doesn't work like that. And while I was there, this old preacher was just like, he asked me, do you know if you're going to heaven or not? He was like, if you were to die tomorrow, do you know whether or not you're going to heaven, whether or not whether or not you belong to the Lord, and you're sealed until the day of redemption? And I said, yeah, I'm going to heaven, you know what I mean? But I wasn't very convincing, I don't suppose. And I didn't really feel very convincing either, because demons had been, haunting me and attacking me while I slept at night, and I would stop breathing, and I didn't realize that I had sleep apnea yet, and I was also like struggling from, my parents in the way that they were kind of mentally abusive to me while they had come to visit, which is a topic that I didn't quite fully hit during this video, of course, and he would basically tell me that, and he would kind of point this Bible verse out to me that I hadn't really honed in on and wasn't really aware of yet. And he would tell me that that those who are sealed by God, that you can't take the seal away from them, and that you can't take salvation away from anyone, and that they can't lose it. That a person is sealed until the day of redemption. And then it specifically says that no one, it says they shall not pluck him, they shall not be plucked from their father's hand, or something like that. And he was telling me that there was no way that any evil was going to be able to take me away from those plans that God had for me, and the salvation that I'd already chosen and accepted and stuff. And it was a really different feeling. It was like, yeah, sure. Before that, I was like, yeah, I believe in God. Yeah, sure, all this stuff. But it wasn't. I was living in misery, in a different form of misery, and there was just something about that. I think that it, in part, was just my obedience, and that there was such a severe issue, and almost like a curse or a witchcraft attack that had been placed over me with my, some activation phrase that my dad used to bring out some tormenting something, I don't know. It was just absolutely horrific. And it was really difficult for me to have to deal with them after everything that I've been through throughout my life, and just seeing what they did with my great-granny and with my grandpa, and just so much had happened. And that there was, were never going to be the kind of people to admit that they were wrong about anything, and that whatever intentions that they had were really like foul, like really dark. And that was really difficult for me, that they were such dark people, they had such dark intentions, and that I had been so forgiving of them so many different times throughout my life. And I was just like such an innocent kid who really didn't need to be treated like that by them or any of their friends or whatever. And that it was just a constant thing that they had to constantly poke and prod and, introduce abuse and humiliation, and, constantly be doing these setups with their friends and stuff. And I'd already been through all of that crap, and here they were showing up, asking me if I wanted to go on a cruise ship with them, and I knew that it was just like, that they did not have, that it was bad. I would end up going home after that with a little bit calmer of a spirit to me, to where all those nightmares stopped, and I felt a newness. I felt like I was able to bless my house again. I felt like I wasn't crying. I was able to get my head straight. I was able to, get on the right level with my kids again and everything. It was a really messed up situation for me. It was a really, really nerve-wracking. It was a really nervous ordeal, and most kids, even as adults, they're going to want to be really good for their parents and seek their parents' approval and all this, especially when we are survival-wise desperate and for any assistance whatsoever, So here I was, and it was like just this realization that it didn't matter if I was on my best behavior or not, that these people were not happy that I was still alive. And I was in my apartment after that preacher praying for me and everything, and after getting myself a little bit more centered, God getting me a little bit more centered, and I felt God point out to me that I wasn't able to look at my own pictures. I felt Him say to me, why do you feel so uncomfortable looking at pictures of yourself? And why is it that your photos are such a mess in your closet? Why can't you look at any of your baby pictures? You can't just go look at them? And that's whenever I started to realize that that God was trying to show me that there was a much bigger problem behind things than just my parents being chomos, and that it's a problem that went way back, and that, and it was like God was reminding me of these abuses that would have happened when I was very little, things that I had really, thought, been, as I said, very just forgiving about and overlooked. And God actually sent me back to my pictures, and I would sit there and start going through my pictures and just look at these pictures of myself as a little girl, as a baby and a toddler, and I would just cry and cry and cry and cry and cry, just looking at those baby pictures and just remembering how terrible things were and how dark things were and how tormented that I was, and how dark my life was, and how everybody worked together to make everything really, really bad. Here's this little girl, and she's like 2 years old. Here I am with my curly, weird blonde hair and this, sad little blue dress, their nasty little sacrifice color. And I would remember them like making a dress just like that, one for my cousin that was red and one for me that was blue. And our grandfather was a Freemason. And I also had to dress like the Rose later on, while everyone else wore black and red or whatever. So that was like a weird thing. It was like that. It ties back into the Freemasons and Eastern Stars and their dealings with satanic sacrifices and terrible things. The Hunger Games, the human hunting games, I mean, it should all really be shut down in a major way. And it was almost like a spell kind of broke off of me, because suddenly I was able to look at these pictures and I didn't feel pure humiliation and embarrassment the way that I did before. I suddenly acknowledged that I was looking at the face of a very young victim, and I felt that that victim needed to be advocated and that justice should eventually be served. That the only way to protect my kids and my grandkids from becoming just the same as that little kid in the photo, that I was really gonna have to do something to make a difference. And that wouldn't be the first time that I would feel that. That wouldn't be the first time that I would feel that way. That same thing would end up going on with me later on, even after I'd forgotten going through this. You know what I mean? As I'm recalling all of this to like describe it to everybody, it's so. Anyways, it kind of changed the way that I saw myself, and it changed the way that I handled my own pictures, because until then I apparently had this issue. I can't remember what the name of it is, but there's actually like a name for whatever that issue is. But you know, when you look at a picture and all that you can feel is your mother sitting in darkness crying, being abused, and things like that, just from a glance at a photo, it makes it to where you really don't want to look at the pictures anymore. You don't want to look at pictures of anything. And I realized in that time frame that I was looking at those pictures that I had a really unusual sense of like a really poor self-image. And you know, I was like, why am I like this? Like, why have I not been able to look at pictures of myself? And it began to really strike me like this wasn't just normal household abuses. This was abuses that were performed by so many different people in so many different ways, under so many different roofs and establishments, and by so many different organizations. This is a trauma and a pain that went so deep that I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. I couldn't even look at photos of myself. And it took me until I was 33 years old before I would actually sit down and take the time to look at those pictures and really start to see them as puzzle pieces that I was using to put together the story of my life, that so much had been, just turned into fog and haze and trial and hardship and darkness and silence. I connected the dots that someone saying goodbye LaDonna, my firstborn, after years of me kind of having this concern that my parents might secretly be in the occult. I realized that they very much were in the occult. They were probably really deep in with the Freemasons and Eastern Stars, if not the legitimate Illuminati itself or whatever. It was a really weird circumstance, like a really weird situation. And they were in the Eastern Stars and stuff whenever I was growing up, my stepmom and a number of other bitches. And I'd actually written to the Eastern Stars in the middle of being trafficked and everything, and asked them if they could please get a handle on things and cut it out, and they were not able to do that. So, they're not very diplomatic in that way. But they do like to follow me into the bathrooms in public places and take pictures of me. After that, I knew they were affiliated with the occult for sure. And I knew that they had dedicated me as the firstborn sacrifice for sure this time, you know what I mean? Which I kind of had an idea of before, but it was mostly just like me being terrified and having these ideas, but this kind of confirmed it for me. I also wondered if when my dad put his hand on my shoulder like that, if he had transferred demons to me, that I had to actually go to that church to kind of get to expel or something, or that there were, I don't know, it was really weird. And I knew that because I had turned down their cruise ship plans and I hadn't humored all of that, I knew that they knew that I was just as suspicious of them as, if not more, than they were of me. And, I suddenly wasn't able to just play along anymore. That it was obvious that I kind of knew what was up. I couldn't just hide that by going on a cruise vacation with these mothers. So I was pretty worried that my family was going to call some shots and have me attacked and brutalized and everything else, and that was exactly what happened. And things ended up getting really bad, and for a slightly extended period of time before I would lose everything. And apparently they would have me assaulted while I was unconscious and sell that on the dark web as well. And they would make sure that I lost my car, at least temporarily. It had to be bailed out. I went to jail. I also had to be bailed out. I lost my apartment, which was ridiculous. They took my kids. I lost everything. And it was just pure evil and demons, basically. It was literally like people had just opened my life up and just poured demons all over me and all over my whole life. And I was terrified to walk back into my apartment. I left and I tried to get help from the police, and they set things up to where the police arrested me and treated me like I was stupid. And then they put me in a room where they sent people in with spray canisters to spray at me. And wait, was that the same time frame? Was that the right time? Yeah, that was the same time frame. Because I ended up getting thrown in jail, and I remember I was in somebody else's clothes. I didn't recognize whose clothes that I was in. And even though from my knowledge I had just laid down earlier that afternoon to take a nap, I woke up and I was 20 or 40 pounds, 20 pounds lighter or 10 pounds lighter. It was weird, dude. There was something going on. I don't know, but I had COVID. I just had COVID or whatever. It's a really complicated situation. That was the attempt that they did, their big attempt against me around the year of 2020 during the COVID and all that. They made this really embarrassing, terrible, basically that was their big attempt or whatever, and they were able to take basically everything in my life, and I did what I could to just work my way to where I could, could continue to, use my Jeep and work and get my own apartment, and and they dragged that out as long as they could, because they secretly had cameras throughout my apartment, and it was easier for them to get whatever secret footage that they needed and to get everybody to go along with it if there weren't kids in the house. But then there were kids in the house too sometimes, and I believe that they had cameras specifically in my kids' bathrooms and bedrooms. I did a great deal to try to prevent my kids from being victimized. Earlier on in my life, it was really difficult for me to even fathom that people did stuff like that. It took me a little while to actually accept that people were doing that, and it took me longer to accept that it was happening potentially to my kids than I believe it would have taken somebody who'd had no exposure to being molested as a kid or those traumas or whatever. And it was it's almost like if that's something that you've been brutally traumatized by, then you might have, especially while you're still very young, especially with your first kid, you are, maybe even with your second, who knows, it's you're bound to have this delayed reaction or this delayed response time, or almost this level of confusion, almost like someone's put witchcraft over you or something like that. It's almost like this haze, I'm not sure whether or not this is happening, and I can't tell whether this is happening. If I found out this was happening, I would probably this person, you know what I'm saying? So it's is that what's happening here? I need to determine that right away. I need to actually determine that. And usually if people creep me out and I thought that, you know what I mean, if there was any chance that there was something that could happen to one of my kids, I wouldn't be hanging out with them. Unfortunately for me, everyone in my community belonged to these different groups, cults, covens, organizations, and all of that. And, there were traffickers, gang stalkers, people who were members in all different forms and factions, and their jobs were to collect and traffic whoever set them up, get rid of them, whatever. And that's what apparently some of these people have spent their entire careers doing. I went through not understanding what was going on, and then having to actually accept that sort of thing might actually be going on, to sitting around watching a bunch of murder mystery and makeup and a bunch of horror stuff, to really show myself that people really did these things. It took me a while, and then when situations like that arose, I didn't know yet how to tackle them. I didn't know how to address them. I'm not sure that everyone really knows how to address situations like that, especially the people who were severely traumatized by those things. It's very difficult for us to accept or to define, and to accept it and to try to change it, especially when we try to open our mouths and ask for help and we're shut down by police officers, CPS workers, and other people who are part of child trafficking rings. But over the course of time, the fog, the whatever was lifted from my eyes. What is the word I was even looking for? I don't know. Anyways, after a while, it became it was almost like the moment that I truly realized what was going on and what everyone was doing. The attacks against me became so relentless that I literally just had to lock myself in an apartment alone for a couple years, as I was saying, and just completely stay to myself and mind my own business, and do everything that I could to try not to get hurt by the people that were being sent to me to sabotage my life. And even though I did so well and stayed to myself and improved my life and improved myself so well in that time frame, in secret, other people were benefiting from that with secret cameras that they installed throughout my apartments and elsewhere. And they were simultaneously, while they were filming me in there, they were coming into my apartment as well and doing whatever they wanted. And they would be hiding in my apartments throughout the history of me having apartments. At one point I went to sleep with my baby right beside me, and I woke up to one of them walking out of my utility closet and leaving the apartment. It's never made any difference for me to lock doors or have doors unlocked or whatever. It's like because I'm always just stuck in these Section 8 places, or no matter where I am, people always have a way to gain access to me. So it's made it to where like I have this very grim and bleak understanding that no matter where I am, I'm not really safe. And I don't believe that anyone is actually safe anywhere now. So anyways, I knew that they planned to eliminate me even more than they already were, because they'd already been trying, and I knew now it would get even worse, and it would just level up to things getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Like, this is the craziest story, to be honest, but I'm not trying to toot my own horn, nor am I trying to glorify any of the evil that has been committed and the horrible, unnecessary inhumanity that's been committed against my kids and I, or anybody's kids, or anyone anywhere. But yeah, they planned to eliminate me so they could carry out their child molester, abuse, torture, exploitation, and trafficking on my kids, which is exactly what they're doing right now, basically. And I think back now, back when I was asked to leave the country and get on those cruise ships, and I now wonder if that wasn't an escape route secretly prepared for me somehow, and that maybe if I had gone to, on these cruise ships and been attacked or whatever, maybe I could have taken my kids and run away and gotten away and made a life and found my way in some other country. But I doubt that I would have done that yet, because I wasn't actually mentally prepared to not be in the U.S. yet. I didn't realize yet that I might be just in a dangerous place altogether. I mean, I knew, but I didn't think that I was going to actually have to leave Babylon yet fully, okay? And sometimes, like I said, I had wondered for a second whether or not I might still be with my kids, and whether or not my kids would be okay if I'd gone on a cruise ship and then had to escape people and ended up in some country other than America, or you know what I mean? Just been like, anyways, it's a weird thought, but I would end up being so freaked out about my parents' visit and my dad's occult related comment, that I would write to the FBI, and I would tell them that my parents were trying to invite me on a cruise ship and that I was worried for my kids, which I knew was probably a stupid idea, because my family had my phone mirrored and my accounts all hacked, and they could see everything that I was doing, and my sister was a Fed, and my stepmom was a Fed, and everybody else in my family works either with the military or the Feds or the government somehow. So I knew that I had about a 5% chance of any federal agent actually seeing that message and putting together any kind of crew of people to try to liberate or help my kids and I in any way. And I also knew that I probably wrote the letter to them wrong, and but I had an idea that people might have been paying attention to what was going on the down low, and I just hoped that they would be able to see through whatever weird situations or whatever, and I hoped that people weren't secretly all on my parents' side and stuff, which ended up actually being the case. And so, because my phone is always by my family, my phone and my life in other ways is hacked and totally controlled, both online, in the cyber world, and financially, and all these other things, and that's just always how it's been. I always knew that there really was no way for me to ask for help without them being tipped off somehow. And that's made things a lot more complicated, and it's given me a whole new perspective on how dangerous that it is to be just an abused family member of someone who works for law enforcement, the justice system, politicians, celebrities, just basically anyone who you can't really speak up to get help over or whatever. It's really opened my eyes up to what real slavery is. And I've spent years now really missing my kids, who I love very much, and especially the littlest one, been really worried about. Not that I'm not worried about all of them, but the youngest one is in a particularly strange form of demonic trap. That's basically all that I wanted to talk about in this video, is about how my parents were trying to take me on cruise ships, and about how I turned them down and everything, and a little bit to do with details surrounding that. But I'd also like to say that I was really worried about the foster home that my kid was in whenever I heard that other children in his house were going on cruise voyages. I thought that that was really bizarre, that his former foster mother was chatting it up so well with my family members who are traffickers, who were trafficking me, while that foster mom never talked to me on the phone and always treated me like dog shit. And then the next thing I knew, the other little boys in the house were going on cruise ships, cruise vacations, which I think is awfully strange for the foster home that's connected to my kid, that's connected to my parents, who are traffickers who liked to go on cruise ships to various islands throughout, the Atlantic, Pacific, I don't know, all of it. I know that they would go on Carnival cruises. And so there's a little bit more about things, and peace.